The night in the alien colony was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy in the air. The human lay on his small bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The hum of the power lines outside his room was the only sound. It had been weeks since he had been sent here, and every night felt the same, lonely and cold. He turned on his side, pulling the thin blanket around his shoulders. His breathing slowed, and his eyes almost closed when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. To the still night, a soft shuffle of feet outside his door, slow and uncertain. His heart jumped. Who would be walking around at this hour? The human sat up, listening carefully. The steps stopped right outside his door. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence returned, heavier now. Then came a gentle knock, so quiet it could almost be mistaken for the wind. He frowned. No one knocked at his room this late. Cautiously, he moved to the door. His hand hovered over the lock, but he didn't open it. Instead, he whispered, "Who's there?" No answer came, just silence. His pulse quickened. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was imagining things. He started to turn back toward his bed when the latch clicked. The door creaked open slowly. A figure stepped inside, small and slender. The dim light from the corridor revealed her face. His maid. Her pale skin glowed faintly and her large eyes caught the light like polished gems. She froze when she saw him awake. Her hands trembled. She hadn't expected him to be sitting there. He blinked in surprise. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, her eyes widened even more as she stared at him. The blanket had slipped from his shoulders, and for the first time, she saw him without his protective suit, without the strange layers that humans always wore in front of her kind. Her lips parted. She gasped softly, as if she had seen something forbidden. He pulled the blanket tighter around himself. "You shouldn't be here," he said. But his voice lacked anger. It was more confusion than anything else. Why had she entered his room, and why was she staring at him like that? The maid stepped back, almost stumbling, her hands pressed against her chest as though her heart was racing. I didn't know," she whispered. Her voice shook. "I thought this room was empty." But her eyes never left him. There was fear in them, but something else too. Curiosity, maybe even awe. The human felt the tension in the room. The air seemed to thicken. He had nothing to hide. And yet her reaction made him feel strangely exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't expected. The maid took another step backward, her heel knocking against the door. The sound echoed in the quiet room. They both froze. Outside, the distant footsteps of patrolling guards could be heard. If they passed by and saw her here, questions would be asked, dangerous questions. The maid's breathing grew fast. She turned toward the door, ready to run. But before she could leave, her eyes flicked back to him one last time. What she saw seemed to hold her in place. Her gaze softened. Her lips moved as though she wanted to say something, but no words came. The human could feel his heartbeat pounding in his chest. The knock that had started this night was no accident. It was the beginning of something he didn't yet understand. And as the maid slowly pulled the door closed behind her, her wide eyes still locked on him, he knew this was not the end. It was only the first step into a dangerous secret that neither of them could escape. The human sat awake long after the maid had left. His room was quiet again, but his heart was not. He replayed the moment over and over in his mind. The door opening, her shocked face, the way she looked at him without his suit. It felt like something had cracked open, something that should have stayed hidden. The next morning, the colony moved as usual. Guards patrolled the halls, machines hummed, and the alien servants went about their duties. Nothing seemed different, yet he felt different. Every time he walked past the maid in the corridors, her eyes darted toward him, wide and searching. She never spoke, but her silence was louder than words. Later that night, when the lights dimmed across the colony, a soft knock came again at his door. His breath caught. He knew who it was. Against his better judgment, he opened it. The maid stood there, trembling. Her hands clutched the edge of her apron, her glowing eyes full of fear. "You saw," she whispered, stepping inside quickly before anyone noticed. "You showed me what no one is allowed to see." Her voice was barely more than a breath. She looked at him as if he carried some great secret. "Why? Why were you without it? Your skin. It's not what the story said." He frowned, unsure how to answer. "I was just trying to sleep," he said quietly. "I don't always wear the suit." She gasped again, covering her mouth with both hands. Her body trembled. "But they told us, if a human removes the layers, the world will burn. They said it is forbidden to even imagine." The human's chest tightened. He realized the stories she had been told were lies. Stories created to keep her kind afraid. "It's not true," he said softly. "I'm just human flesh and bone, nothing more." The maid stared at him as if she couldn't believe. Her hands slowly lowered from her face. "I saw you," she whispered. "You looked fragile, not dangerous. But if anyone else finds out," her voice cracked, her eyes filled with tears, "they will not forgive me. They will not forgive you either." He stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. "Then no one else will find out?" The words hung heavy in the air. A secret shared, a bond that was forming without either of them asking for it. The maid nodded shakily, but her fear did not fade. "You don't understand," she said, clutching her apron tighter. "My kind believes humans carry a fire inside, a power too. Dangerous, they say if we touch you it will kill us." She looked at him with trembling lips. "But I touched you last night and I'm still alive." Silence filled the room. He remembered the brief brush of her fingers, the spark that had passed between them. It was real. He had felt it too. A shiver ran down his spine. The maid wiped her eyes and whispered, "If the others know what I saw, they will think I broke the law. They will punish me." She looked at him desperately. "Promise me you will not speak of this. Promise me, human." He looked into her glowing eyes, and though he wanted to promise, he hesitated. This secret was already too big to hide forever, but when he saw her trembling hands and heard the crack in her voice, he nodded. "I promise," he said. Her shoulders sagged with relief. She turned toward the door, but before leaving, she stopped. Her voice was steadier now, but her eyes still glistened. "You are not what they said you were," she whispered. "You are something else." Then she slipped out, leaving him standing in the dim light of his room. The human sat back down, his thoughts racing. The maid knew a truth no one else had seen, a truth that could shatter the lies of her people. But he also knew that secrets this big never stayed hidden for long. And outside his room, the sound of distant guards reminded him of the danger growing closer with every passing night. The human could not sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the shadows across the ceiling. His thoughts filled with the maid's trembling voice, her wide eyes, and her words about forbidden stories. Every breath felt heavier, as if the walls of his small room pressed in around him. At last he sat up. The silence of the colony stretched around him, but then, just like the night before, he heard it. The softest of knocks at his door. His heart raced. He already knew who it was. Without thinking, he rose and opened it. The maid stood there, pale in the dim light. Her eyes darted down the hall before she slipped inside. She pressed her back against the door once it was closed. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Someone almost saw me yesterday. I cannot stay away." "But I should not be here," the human frowned. "Then why did you come?" His voice was quiet but firm. Her eyes lifted to his, glowing faintly in the darkness. "Because I need to know," she whispered. "I need to hear the truth from your mouth, not from the lies they feed us." She stepped closer, her small frame trembling. "What are you really hiding under that suit? Why must humans cover themselves like prisoners? Why do they keep us from seeing?" Her voice cracked as if each question cost her something. He stared at her, unsure what to say. For a long moment, silence wrapped around them. Only the hum of the machines outside filled the air. Finally, he spoke. We wear the suit because it is safer for us in this place, not because we are monsters. We breathe differently. Our bodies are weaker here. The maid gasped softly. Weaker? Her face twisted in confusion. But they told us humans are stronger than any other. They said if we touch your skin it would burn us alive, yet I touched you and nothing happened, only warmth. Her words lingered in the air like fire. He remembered the spark of her touch, the way it had not harmed her but instead stirred something inside him. Maybe they don't want you to know the truth, he said carefully. Maybe they fear what would happen if you did. Her eyes glistened. She shook her head slowly. If they find out I have seen you like this, they will not forgive me. I should be afraid, yet I am not. Her voice dropped lower. I keep hearing your voice in my mind. I keep seeing you without the armor, so fragile, so human. The human stepped closer without realizing his shadow fell across her face. For a moment, they simply stared at each other in silence. The air between them felt heavy. She whispered, Last night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking, if the others knew the truth, they would destroy you. His chest tightened at her words. He could see the fear in her, but beneath it, he also saw something else. A spark of courage. A fragile bond forming where none should exist. Then we keep this between us, he said. No one else needs to know. The maid nodded slowly, but her lips trembled. Secrets are dangerous, she whispered. Dangerous for me, and deadly for you. Her hand brushed against her chest, as if she was holding her heart still. But I will carry it for you. For the first time since coming to the colony, the human felt seen, not as a stranger, not as a tool, but as something real. The maid's voice broke through his guarded heart. She had risked everything to be here, standing in the shadows with him. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed in the hall. Outside, both froze. Their eyes met in panic. The voices of guards carried through the metal walls, sharp and commanding. The maid pressed closer, her hand gripping his arm tightly. Her breath came fast. The human whispered quickly, Stay still, don't make a sound. She nodded, her glowing eyes wide with fear. They waited as the shadows of the guards passed beneath the thin crack of the door. The sound lingered, then faded away. The maid finally exhaled, leaning against him without meaning to. One day they will find us, she whispered, and when they do, I don't know what they will take first, my life or yours. The human said nothing, but inside he knew she was right. What had started with one midnight knock was quickly becoming something neither of them could control. The human stood frozen. In the middle of his small room, the maid was pressed close to him, her hand gripping his arm as the sound of the guards faded into silence. Her breathing was fast, uneven. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, trembling but refusing to let go. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the colony walls surrounded them, carrying the faint noise of machines and distant footsteps. Finally, the maid whispered, I should not be here, but I cannot stay away. Her voice shook. I saw what I was not meant to see, and now I cannot forget it. The human looked down at her. And what did you see? He asked softly. His words carried both challenge and fear. The maid swallowed hard. I saw that you are not what they say you are. They call you dangerous. But all I saw was someone, human. Her words stirred something deep inside him. He had lived under stares of suspicion since arriving in the colony. Always covered, always hidden. Yet here she was, looking at him as if he were something fragile instead of something feared. Slowly, she lifted her hand. Her fingers trembled as they reached toward the edge of his blanket. Her lips parted as if she was about to ask permission, but no words came. The human caught her wrist gently, his grip firm, but not harsh. Don't, he whispered. It's not safe. Her eyes locked onto his, wide and unblinking. They told us touching you would burn. She whispered back. But last night I touched you and I am still alive. She pulled her hand free, ignoring his warning. Let me see again. Let me know what is real. Before he could stop her, her fingers brushed against his bare skin. A shock of warmth passed between them. Not painful, but alive. The human gasped quietly, his body stiffening at the contact. The maid's eyes widened, but she did not pull back. Instead, she let her hand rest gently on his arm. For a moment, the world outside did not exist. There were no guards, no rules, no threats. Only the quiet hum of the room and the strange bond forming through that single touch, the maid whispered. So warm, so fragile, not fire, not poison, only human. The human felt his throat tighten. You don't understand, he said. If someone sees this, it could cost you everything. But she shook her head, her hand refusing to move. It already has, she whispered. The moment I saw you, I crossed a line I can never return from. Her eyes glistened in the dim light, filled with both fear and wonder. He saw the truth in her expression. She was no longer just a servant. She was someone tied to him by a secret that could never be undone. Then a sudden noise broke the moment. A heavy clang in the corridor outside. Both of them jumped. Her hand snapped back from his arm. Her chest rose and fell in panic. The human quickly pulled the blanket tighter around himself. His heart pounded against his ribs. The footsteps grew louder. Guards were moving down the hall again. The maid's face drained of color. She looked at him desperate. If they find me here, it's over, she whispered. The human grabbed her wrist gently, guiding her toward the corner of the room where the shadows were deepest. Stay there, don't move, he ordered quietly. The door rattled once as if tested. Both of them held their breath. The guards' voices murmured outside, sharp and low. Then, after a long moment, the sound faded again. Their steps carried further down the hall, leaving silence behind. The maid sagged against the wall, pressing her trembling hands to her chest. Her voice was faint but clear. I touched you, and I am still alive. She looked at him, her eyes shining with something he could not name. I will never believe their lies again. The human stood in the middle of the room, staring at her. He realized the danger had only grown. Their secret was no longer just about an accident. It was about a choice she had made when her hand touched his skin, a forbidden touch that had bound them together in a way that could never be undone. The room was quiet again, but the human and the maid were not calm. Her trembling hands pressed against her chest as if trying to steady her racing heart. He stood still, the blanket clutched around his shoulders. His mind spun with the danger. They had just escaped. For a long moment they said nothing. The hum of the machines filled the silence. The maid's glowing eyes watched him with both fear and wonder. At last she whispered, I should leave if I stay longer. I will bring ruin to us both. She turned toward the door, but before she reached it, a sudden noise split the air. A shrill alarm rang through the corridor outside, sharp and metallic. The human's heart jumped. The maid froze, her eyes wide in terror. The alarm grew louder, echoing against the metal walls. Lights flickered red in the narrow cracks of the door. Voices rose outside, guards shouting to one another. The colony was awake, restless, searching. The maid spun around, her voice trembling. They are searching the halls. If they find me, here they will know I broke the law. Her breath came fast. She clutched her apron tightly as though it could shield her. The human's instincts flared. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her away from the door. Hide, he said quickly. His eyes darted to the narrow space beneath his bed, but it was too small. Then he spotted the storage trunk in the corner. He flung it open and motioned for her to climb inside. She shook her head in panic. No, I will suffocate, she whispered. Her body trembled. I cannot. The human's voice softened, though the alarm still blared outside. Only for a moment, just until they pass, I won't let anything happen to you. Her glowing eyes met his, searching for trust. At last she nodded and climbed inside the trunk, curling herself small. He lowered the lid gently, leaving a crack so she could breathe. His chest tightened at the thought of her trapped in the dark, but it was the only way. The alarm grew louder as footsteps pounded closer. The human sat quickly, on the bed, pulling the blanket high around him, his face calm though his heart thundered inside. The door burst open, 2 guards stepped in, their heavy boots clanging on the metal floor. Their eyes swept the room. "Inspection," one barked. His voice was sharp. "There are reports of unauthorized movement in this section." The human kept his expression blank. "I've been here all night," he said evenly. His voice did not shake, though sweat pricked the back of his neck. The guard narrowed his eyes, scanning the corners of the room. His gaze lingered near the trunk. The human's stomach knotted. One guard stepped closer, reaching out to lift the lid. Just then, a voice crackled through the guard's comms, urgent and commanding. "Section 3 clear. Report back to the upper level." The guards exchanged a glance, then stepped back. "Stay in your quarters," one ordered, his tone sharp. "If you hear or see anything unusual, you will report it." Without another word, they turned and marched out, slamming the door behind them. The alarm faded into the distance, the red lights dimmed back to pale white. The human exhaled slowly. His hands shook as he hurried to the trunk. Lifting the lid, he found the maid curled up inside, her eyes squeezed shut, her body shaking. She gasped when the light touched her face and clung to his arm as he helped her out. Her voice broke. "I thought they would find me," she whispered. "I thought it was the end." Tears glistened in her glowing eyes. The human steadied her. "You're safe," he said quietly, though he knew it was only for now. The maid looked up at him, her voice stronger than before. "You risked everything to protect me," she whispered. Her trembling hand rested against his chest. "Why?" He searched her face, the truth heavy in his throat. He had no answer, not yet. But he knew the bond between them had only grown stronger in the shadows of danger. And as the last echo of the alarm faded into silence, he realized this secret could no longer be hidden forever. The human sat on the edge of his bed, his chest still heavy from the pounding alarm. The maid clung to his arm, her small body trembling as though the echoes of danger still lingered in her bones. Her glowing eyes were wide, but behind the fear there was something stronger, something he could not name. Slowly she pulled away, wiping the wetness from her cheeks. Her voice shook at first, then grew steadier. "I have to tell you something," she whispered. "Something I was never supposed to say." The human looked at her, silent, waiting. She lowered her gaze, her fingers clutching the fabric of her apron tightly. "Since I was a child, we were told stories about your kind," she said softly. "Stories that filled us with fear. They told us that humans without, their suits carried fire under their skin. That one touch could burn us to ash." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "They warned us never to look at you uncovered, never to imagine it, never to dream. They said it was death, pure and certain." Her shoulders shook as if the weight of the words hurt. The human's brows furrowed. "And now?" he asked quietly. Her head lifted, her eyes wet but steady. "And now I know they lied," she whispered. Her voice carried both pain and defiance. "I touched you and I am still here. I felt warmth, not fire. I felt life." Silence stretched. Between them, the human's heart tightened. He had suspected their leader's twisted truths, but hearing it from her lips made it real. "Why would they lie to you?" he asked softly. The maid's lips trembled. "Because fear keeps us silent," she whispered. "Fear keeps us obedient. If we believe you are monsters, we will never try to stand beside you." Her words struck him like a blade. He thought of the way the guards treated him, the rules pressed on his shoulders, the endless watching eyes. It all made sense now. The maid stepped closer, her trembling hand brushing against his blanket. "When I saw you without it, I thought my heart would stop," she said. "Not because of fear, but because you looked so different, so human, so fragile, like us, maybe more than us." The human's throat tightened. He had lived for so long feeling like an outsider. Yet here she was, seeing him not as danger but as truth. He whispered, "You are the only one who has seen me like this." Her eyes softened. "Then I will keep it," she said. "I will keep your secret, even if it costs me." She pressed her hand against her chest, as though sealing a vow. Before he could answer, A faint noise drifted through the walls, distant voices, harsh and suspicious. The guards were still searching, still restless. The maid's eyes flicked toward the door, her voice dropping to a trembling whisper. If they ever find out, they will not only punish me, they will punish you. They will call you dangerous and they will end you. The human's jaw clenched. Then they cannot find out, he said firmly. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. We keep this between us, no one else. Do you understand? The maid nodded quickly, her glowing eyes shining with both fear and trust. I understand, she whispered. Then she leaned closer, her voice breaking. But you don't see, human. You don't see what I see. They call you weak here. They say you are bound by rules, but I know the truth. I know you are not weak. I know you carry strength they cannot imagine. Her words stunned him. For the first time, someone saw beyond the armor, beyond the orders. She saw the human underneath, and believed the human sat in silence, his mind heavy with her confession. She had given him her trust, her loyalty, and perhaps something deeper. But he also knew her truth was dangerous, and if even a whisper of it escaped these walls, both their lives would shatter. Outside, the colony hummed as if nothing had changed, but inside that room, everything was different. For now the maid knew the truth, and she had bound herself to it with every beat of her trembling heart. The room was dim, the faint hum of the colony's walls surrounding them. The maid stood close, her hands clasped together, her glowing eyes fixed on the human as if she had made a choice she could never take back. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavy but not empty. It was filled with unspoken words, fear, and something else, something fragile. The human finally broke the silence, his voice quiet. You should not risk this for me. The maid shook her head, her lips trembling. I already have, she whispered. I saw you uncovered. I touched. You and I lived. That alone is enough to condemn me if they knew. She took a deep breath. But I do not care anymore. I would rather carry the truth than live inside their lies. The human looked at her with surprise. He had expected fear, perhaps distance. Instead, she was drawing closer, not further away. Why me? He asked softly. Why trust me? Her eyes glistened. Because you looked at me differently, she said. Not as a servant, not as property. You looked at me as if I was real. Her voice cracked. And now I look at you the same. I see you as more than they allow me to believe. Her words sank deep into him. He had carried loneliness since arriving here, his body covered, his heart locked away. Yet here she was, standing in the shadows, giving him something no one else had. Trust. The maid stepped forward. Slowly, as if pulled by something she could not resist, her hand lifted, hesitating in the air. Then she pressed it gently to his chest. Her fingers rested against his heartbeat, warm and steady beneath her touch. You are alive, she whispered. Not fire, not death, only alive. Her eyes filled with something softer now, not fear, but devotion. And because I have seen this, I belong to you now. My life is tied to this secret. To you. The human's breath caught. He had not expected such words. They were heavy, dangerous, but also powerful. You don't have to belong to anyone, he said. His voice was low but steady. You can choose your own path. But the maid shook her head. I have chosen, she said firmly, her glowing eyes locked on his. I will carry your secret. I will stand beside you. If anyone dares to call you dangerous, they will face me first. Her words left him speechless. For the first time since he had come here, he felt something stronger than loneliness, stronger than fear. It was connection. It was the fragile beginning of a bond that should not exist, but did, outside. Faint voices echoed in the corridor, sharp and watchful. The maid flinched but did not move away. She whispered quickly, If they see us together, they will not understand. But I will not leave you, even if the shadows are the only place we can meet. I will stay here, close to you. The human studied, his heart heavy with both fear and gratitude. He realized she was no longer just a maid who had walked into his room by mistake. She was now part of his fate, tied to him by choices and secrets. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. The danger outside still existed, but within the room, there was a strange peace. He reached out slowly, resting his hand gently over hers. The warmth of their joined touch sealed the moment. Neither of them spoke further. There were no words strong enough to capture what had been decided in that quiet room. A bond had been forged in the shadows, unbreakable and dangerous yet strangely comforting. And though the human knew the path ahead would only grow darker, he also knew he would no longer walk it alone. The following day felt different. The human could sense it the moment he stepped out of his room. The colony was not calm anymore. Whispers drifted through the halls, servants moved nervously, and the guard's boots struck the floor with sharper rhythm. He walked carefully, trying not to draw attention, but he noticed eyes turning toward him, lingering longer than usual. Their gazes were not curious but watchful, as if they were waiting for him to slip. Later, as he worked near the supply bay, he saw the maid passing with a tray in her hands. Her steps were unsteady, and her eyes darted from side to side. When she caught sight of him, she quickly looked away, but he could see the tremble in her shoulders. She too felt the change in the air. That night, when the halls finally quieted, there was no knock. Instead, the human sat in his room listening, every sound outside louder than usual. His heart beat faster when he heard it. Low voices near his door. The guards were speaking, their tone sharp and suspicious. Someone saw movement. One voice muttered, "A maid entered this sector last night, out of place," and the other guard growled, "If she broke the rules, she will confess. They always confess." The human clenched his fists under the blanket. His chest tightened. They were already hunting for her. Moments later, the door opened without warning. The maid slipped inside. Her face pale, her breathing shallow. She pressed her back against the wall, her eyes glowing wide with fear. "They are watching me," she whispered. "I hear them whisper my name. They think I broke the law." The human stood quickly, pulling her toward the shadowed corner of the room. "You should not have come," he said, his voice low but urgent. "If they catch you here, they will know everything." Her lips trembled. "I could not stay away. They will question me. Tomorrow I can feel it." Her hands shook as she gripped his arm. "If I lie, I may live. If I tell the truth, they will kill me. But either way, they will look at you." The human's jaw tightened. He felt the walls of the colony pressing in, the lies closing around them. "Then we cannot let them know," he whispered, his voice firm, though the weight of the risk pressed hard against him. The maid's eyes glistened with tears. "I don't regret it," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't regret seeing you, touching you, knowing the truth. But the others, they will never forgive me. They will never forgive us." Outside, heavy boots echoed closer. The human pressed a finger to his lips, motioning for silence. Both of them held their breath as shadows passed under the door. Voices murmured low and threatening. The guards lingered too long, as if testing the air. Then at last the sound of steps faded. The maid sagged against him, trembling. Her voice was a broken whisper. "They are closing in." Her glowing eyes lifted to meet his, full of fear and fragile trust. "Soon, one of us will not survive this secret." The human swallowed hard, his hands rested on her shoulders, steadying her. "Then we survive together," he said firmly. "No matter what they do, no matter what they ask, we face it side by side." Her lips parted as if to argue, but instead she nodded slowly, pressing her forehead against his chest. In the silence that followed, the truth was clear. The threat was no longer just outside his door. It was already creeping into their lives, waiting to strike. And though the colony's hum filled the night as always, he knew the peace was gone. From this moment on, every knock, every step, every whisper could be the one that destroyed them both. The morning came with tension thick in the air. The colony felt colder, quieter. Every servant moved with careful steps, and the guard's eyes scanned each face with suspicion. The human noticed the difference immediately. The whispers had grown louder, and he could feel they were circling closer to the truth. By midday, the maid was taken aside. 2 guards blocked her path and ordered her to follow. She obeyed, her tray shaking in her hands until it slipped, metal cups clattering against the floor. She bent to pick them up, but one guard yanked her by the arm, pulling her forward. Her glowing eyes darted once toward the human in the distance, fear flashing across her face before she was dragged away. The human's stomach tightened. He wanted to move to stop them, but he knew one wrong step could expose everything. He forced himself to stay still, watching helplessly as she disappeared through the corridor. Hours passed before he saw her again. She returned pale, her lips trembling. Her steps were weak, as though her legs could no longer carry her. She slipped into his room later that night, closing the door behind her with shaking hands. "They questioned me," she whispered. Her voice cracked like broken glass. "They asked where I was, who I served, why I was near this sector." Her fingers clutched at her apron. "I lied. I told them I was delivering supplies, that I lost my way." The human's chest tightened. "Did they believe you?" he asked. She shook her head slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. "One of them looked into my eyes too long, as if he could see through me. I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled." She stepped closer, her hands reaching for him. "I cannot keep this secret alone," she whispered. "Every question feels like a knife. Every stare feels like a trap. If they keep pressing me, I will break. I will fail you." The human caught her trembling hands in his. His grip was steady, though his heart pounded. "You did not fail," he said firmly. "You held your ground today. That is enough. I will not let them take you." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "But what if they already know?" she whispered. "What if my lie is not enough? They will return tomorrow. They will not stop until they have proof." The human's jaw clenched. His mind raced. He knew she was right. Lies could only hold for so long, and once they broke, both of them would be destroyed. Outside, heavy boots echoed again in the corridor. The maid froze, her body stiffening. She clutched his arm tightly, her breath quick and shallow. The voices of guards drifted closer, cruel and certain. "The maid is hiding something," one said. "She will slip soon." The human pulled her closer into the shadowed corner of the room, his voice low and urgent. "You will not slip. Not while I am here." He could feel her trembling against him, her fear pressing into his chest. For a long, tense moment, the guards lingered outside his door. One tested the handle, rattling it. The human's heart slammed inside his chest. He tightened his hold on the maid, ready for the worst. But at last, the footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. The maid sagged against him, tears falling freely now. "I cannot do this," she whispered. "They will break me. They will break us." Her voice cracked with despair. The human pressed his hand gently against her back, steadying her. "Then we stand together," he whispered. "If they force you to lie again, I will carry the weight beside you." His voice grew firmer. "I will not let them destroy what we have." She looked up at him through her tears, her lips trembling but her eyes shining with fragile hope. "You speak as if we are one," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Maybe we are." In that quiet, dangerous room surrounded by shadows and whispers, the bond between them deepened, stronger than lies, stronger than fear. But outside, the colony was already circling, ready to strike. The human sat alone in his room, his thoughts restless. The colony outside was quiet. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence that carried warning, as if the walls themselves were listening. He knew the guards were closing in. He knew the maid would not survive another round of questioning. That night he made his choice. When the halls grew still and the faint hum of machines filled the air, he unlocked the door. A soft knock came soon after, and she stepped inside. Her glowing eyes looked frightened, her hands shaking as she clutched her apron. "You should not have called me," she whispered. They are watching me closer than ever. Her voice cracked. If they see me here tonight, it will be the end. The human stood, his expression firm. It is already the end if we keep hiding, he said. His words were quiet but steady. They will keep pressing until they tear the truth from us. I will not wait for that moment. The maid's lips trembled. What do you mean? She asked softly. He took a deep breath, then reached for the collar of his suit. Slowly he pulled it open, layer by layer, until the fabric slid from his shoulders. He stood bare before her, the secret stripped away willingly this time. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter in the dim light. She gasped, one hand rising to cover her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. Why would you do this? She whispered. If anyone enters now, if anyone sees... He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. Because I want you to see me. Not by accident, not in shadows, but by choice. His gaze locked on hers. You are the only one who has looked at me and not seen a monster. If this is the end, then let it be with truth, not lies. The maid's hands shook, but she lowered them slowly. Her gaze swept over him, fragile and raw. Her lips trembled. You are not what they told us, she whispered. You are not fire, not poison. You are beautiful. Her words struck him deeper than he expected. For years he had lived behind armor, unseen, unwanted. Yet here was a maid, trembling yet fearless, daring to call him human, daring to call him more. Her hand rose slowly, as if drawn by something beyond her will. She touched his bare chest gently, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. Her eyes glistened with tears. Alive, she whispered. So alive. The human caught her trembling hand, holding it against him. His voice was heavy with unspoken feeling. If they come for me, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that I was not what they said. Remember that you saw the truth. Her lips parted, her voice breaking. I cannot remember alone, she whispered. I will stand beside you. I will not let them take you without me. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed outside the door, loud and certain, guards marching, voices sharp and cruel. The human froze, pulling the maid closer, her body pressed against him, her breath quick and shallow. The voices grew louder. Check every room, one ordered. No one leaves unexamined tonight. The door handle rattled once, twice. The maid clung to him, her glowing eyes wide with terror. The human whispered, fiercely, Stay behind me. His muscles tensed, his mind raced with choices, none of them safe, none of them simple. Tonight was the night everything would change. The door creaked, the shadows outside thickened, and in that tense heartbeat, the human knew this was the night of decision, the moment their secret would either survive or be shattered forever. The door burst open with a metallic clang. Guards stormed inside, their boots striking the floor like thunder. The human stood tall, the blanket gone, his bare form exposed under the dim light. The maid froze at his side, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The guards stopped short, shock flickering across their faces. One snarled, uncovered, just as the whispers said. His voice carried both triumph and disgust. The other pointed at the maid. And her, caught with him, breaking every law of service. The maid's body trembled, but before the guards could move closer, she stepped forward. Her small frame stood in front of the human like a shield. Her voice shook, but did not break. He is mine, she declared. I saw him, I touched him, and I live. Your lies cannot bind me anymore. The room fell silent. The guards blinked in disbelief. Never before had a servant dared speak such words. The human's heart slammed. Inside his chest, he reached for her arm, wanting to pull her back, but she held her ground. One guard growled, Step aside, girl, or you will suffer first. The maid lifted her chin, her glowing eyes blazing. Then let me suffer, she said. Because if you strike him, you strike me too. The guards hesitated, their anger clear but their confusion sharper. Never had defiance looked so fragile, yet so unbreakable. The human felt something ignite inside him. For too long, he had hidden, living under their rules. But now, watching her stand against them, he realized he could not hide anymore. He stepped forward, his voice strong. You fear me uncovered because you know the truth. You built your walls of lies to keep us apart, but you cannot unmake what she has seen. He placed a hand gently on the maid's shoulder. You cannot unmake what we are now. The guards exchanged glances, their hands twitching near their weapons. The tension was thick. One wrong move could end everything. But the maid spoke, again her voice steady. He is not fire. He is not poison. He is only human. Her words rang clear in the small room, carrying more weight than the alarms that had echoed nights before. The human's throat tightened. He had been called many things: danger, monster, outsider, but never simply human. Hearing it now in her trembling voice gave him strength. The guard snarled, one stepping forward. If you protect him, you betray us all. But the maid did not move. Her hands clenched at her sides, her body shaking but unyielding. Then let me betray, she whispered. The human could feel the air shift. This was the moment that would decide everything. He looked at the guards, his voice steady. You can take me, but you will not break her, and you will never erase the truth she carries. Silence filled the room. The guards' faces twisted with anger, but beneath it was fear. They had seen her defy the lies. They had seen him uncovered without death following. Their certainty was broken. At last the guards stepped back, their eyes burning. This is not over, one hissed. Your secret will spread, and when it does, both of you will pay. They turned sharply and left, slamming the door behind them. The human and the maid stood frozen, their breaths heavy in the silence that followed. She collapsed against him, her body trembling. We are doomed, she whispered. But he wrapped his arms around her, his voice low but firm. No, we are free. We may not survive their wrath, but the lie has already cracked. They cannot control what has begun. The maid lifted her face, her glowing eyes wet with tears but shining with defiance. Then whatever comes, I will face it with you, she whispered. Her words were soft, but they carried the weight of destiny. The human held her close, his heart steady for the first time since arriving. The choice had been made, the bond sealed. And though the path ahead was uncertain and full of danger, he knew their lives would never again belong to fear. This night, in this room, a maid and a human had defied the laws of an empire, and that choice had changed them forever.